Well, we should be live. Hi everyone. If there is anyone watching, I'm Alexandra. For the ones who don't know me, I'm a mid-stakes cash game player and a Run It Once coach. And this is Paul. Today we're gonna look through some hands that were sent to us by our students. I think they were played at 50 NL. Personally, I've never seen them before. I think Paul didn't either. So yeah, Paul, anything to add?
No, let's just jump into the hands and just let everyone know. For the hour that we're going to be running this stream, there's going to be a discount on Run It Once. So if you want to sign up to either Elite or Essential, you can get a second month free if you sign up using the code STREAM at checkout. So I'll just put some information about that in the chat. Loads of background noise coming from you, Alexandra. I don't know.
Is it still?
No, just when you're moving. But yeah, we can jump into the hands.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to position my mic properly. Alright, so we face an open from the button to 2.5x and we 3-bet the big blind. For me, this would be a pure 3-bet. I think some ranges have some low frequency calls with ace-jack suited, but yeah, I would just pure 3-bet it. In terms of sizing, I know some ranges recommend bigger sizes. I would assume that is because they 3-bet way more polar. I think it depends, on how polar you construct your big blind range when you pick the size. I like the size, but I think it goes better with a bit of a more linear range. Paul, anything about preflop?
No, all seems good to me.
Okay. And we see an ace king deuce flop. Again, this board is probably gonna be very good for us no matter how we 3-bet, because even if we 3-bet very polar, we're still gonna have some offsuit ace-x. Obviously, aces, kings, ace king are quite exclusive to our range. We can even have some ace deuce from time to time. So yeah, very good board for us. I think we could choose either a polar strategy with a big size or a small range, but at least exploitatively, I think a small range bet works. Don't mind any of those. What about you, Paul? How would you play this?
Yeah, I'd personally play using a big size and a check. But again, I wouldn't mind just going for that small range bet. I think some people are going to find it hard to continue against maybe a 25% C bet here. So I think either's fine.
All right. He goes 1/3, and what I would like to mention in these spots is that if we range bet, I think it's gonna be relatively important to size down to a quarter, because we are already making a simplification. This won't be a 100% c-bet board, so if we also go 1/3, it can be a bit too much of a simplification, and also they are not supposed to call as wide or to find races, therefore they're probably gonna do a bit less mistakes against 1/3 than a quarter. So yeah, if we range bet, I would like to see a smaller size. It's not a huge deal, but something worth considering.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important because here, if you have pocket queens and you go for the size, you're going to struggle to find a lot of those worst pocket pairs, continuing. So would agree with Alexandra here, using 20 to 25% C bet if you bet with your range. I think makes a lot more sense.
Okay, we get called and the turn is an 8. Usually the way these spots work is that when we bet range or very very often on the flop, it means that we already filtered we didn't filter our range, so we basically get to the turn with all or almost all of our pre-flop range, while villain, when he calls, he kind of filters his range, right? So now he doesn't have a bunch of trash. We are also out of position, which usually kind of hurts our equity realization. Therefore, on these blank turns, we should start betting big and quite polar. I think ace-jack is going to be around the threshold of our value range, and I think it's probably gonna mix. I think the fact that we have spades would incentivize me a bit more to check, because we unblock clubs and hearts, which are missed backdoor flush draws that villain might bluff with. But yeah, I don't mind betting this sometimes as well. What are your thoughts?
I completely agree. I think you pretty much nailed that turn spot. So yeah, we can continue here. Good morning, Dean. Dean says good morning.
Good morning, Dean. It's 5 p.m. for me, but good morning. Okay, we bet he calls, and river is 4 of diamonds. I'm curious how you would play these spots with your range. Would this be a spot where you split sizings between a small size and a big size, or if you bet, would you only shove?
Yeah, I would personally just only shove here, just because the stack to pot ratio. And yeah, I think this hand now is probably a hand we want to start just putting into a check line, I would assume. How would you play this spot?
Well, I'm not sure really, because I know from my previous study that actually, even though the SPR is quite low, when a flush completes on the river, we kind of want to start having some small sizes, because, if we have a hand like ace jack here, for example, it gets kind of dodgy to bet for a big size, and also checking doesn't perform that great, because like if we think of checking, I'm not even sure this should be a check call here, because what is he bluffing with? I mean, we block his natural bluffs if he gets here with like jack 10, queen jack, although I assume not all of those would call the turn. He's definitely not betting worse for value, and flushes get there. It's just not very natural to bluff in these spots. So yeah, if I check, especially if my opponent is quite passive, I would definitely consider check folding. But I think having some 1/3 sizings here might make sense, right? If we have like kings, aces, it's not like they aren't worth a shove. It's just that they block so much of his calling range. I think something like ace queen is probably worth a 1/3 here. So yeah, I think I would construct a strategy around 1/3 and maybe put this hand into that size, because he's still gonna have stuff like king queen, right? That's gonna be put in a tough spot, like ace 5, maybe some ace 9, ace 10. That will probably always check back if we check, but we can probably still get some value with the 1/3, and obviously we can also mix in some flashes for that size. So yeah, like I think having a significant 1/3 range here would work, but I might be wrong. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it seems interesting. It's not something I've really ever implemented, so yeah, new to me.
Would you like to check in the solver if that's
Yeah,
a good
we
strategy?
can have a look, yeah, for sure. Dean questioned then, in that situation, how thin should they raise for value versus a blocker bet? I guess we can just have a look in the sim, and then we can discuss whether we think what the sim is doing is good or bad.
Yeah, I think some 2 pairs might get in their sets for sure. I don't think it's gonna be only flushes. Let me just find the spot. We have 3-bet big blind versus button. Do you see it? Ace, king, use. I even remember the suit, so yeah, you nailed it. We should actually bet big and polar on this board, and I think this actually is gonna apply even more if we're from the big blind than from the small blind, just because we have so much trash in our range. And we see here that we're actually not betting all that frequent. Should I just change it to a range bet? Would we assume he range bets here?
No, I mean, he may just be going for a 33 and betting sometimes and checking with some hands. I wouldn't assume that it's just going to be a range bet, and we haven't got the note, so maybe just keep the sim as is.
Okay.
But I think it's important for people to realize that on that flop here, when we're betting, if you can go back to it for me, we're betting at 57% of the time for 33%, whilst the solver wants to bet around 40% for the 67% sizing. Obviously, you're just going to be getting a lot more money in with your strongest hands when you're going for the 67%. And by only going 33%, we're not allowed to bet all that more frequently. So I think it's quite important here to either size down, as we mentioned, to around 20% and bet a lot more, or to size up and just get much more value from the hands that are going to bet, because the betting range is similar, whether you're betting 33% or 67%. So you may as well just be getting that more value with your stronger hands.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I still think, especially in lower stakes, I think it's more likely people are gonna do more mistakes against small range bets than against big sizes, just because it's more intuitive to play against the big ones. But yeah, definitely, if you play your strategy well, both should work. Okay, so we bet 1/3, we see 0% raises. I'm not sure about this, but I would assume if we bet 25% and we go range, he's actually supposed to find a decent raise frequency, which I don't necessarily think it's gonna happen, and he's also supposed to call a bunch more of this stuff, which, yeah, just quite difficult to nail the frequency.
Yeah.
Did you wanna add something about flop?
No.
Okay, turn was 8 of diamonds, right?
I'm not completely sure if you want to double check.
Did you forget how good my memory is?
Yeah, mine's not. Okay, so yeah, we can see ace jack here, just nearly pure continuing, which I would expect. There's nothing here that really shocked me about how we would continue on the turn. Jack 10, queen jack, obviously the hands that we want to be continuing as our bluffs because they have some equity, they have good blockers to imposition strongest top pairs. So yeah, nothing surprises me here on the turn. Maybe something that's interesting here for some people is continuing the 8x. I think a lot of people that see bet flop and then turn an 8 will probably just check very often. But as you can see here in the solver, this is quite a nice hand to continue barreling because you block so much of imposition's strongest hands. And you have some equity as well, right? You can still river 2 pair, you can still river trips with your 10, 8, 8, 9 type of hands.
Yeah. I think that's quite a good concept to remember, especially if we think we don't really have showdown value. What I'm quite surprised by here is that we actually bet spades and clubs more often than spades. It's not a huge thing, but I would have imagined it's the other way around. And also our value threshold seems to be ace 10, not ace jack, and he still bets at a decent frequency. So yeah, maybe I'm betting a bit so not thin enough in this spot. Good to know. Against the bet, the first thing that stands out for me is that he's supposed to have a decent frequency of shoves with ace 5, ace 4, ace queen, almost pure shoving, and I don't think people will actually have shoves in game here almost at all. So that means we probably should be a bit more careful by the river because they are gonna have more top pairs than they are supposed to.
Yeah.
Anything you want to talk about here?
No, I just think, again, that's going to interact with the river strategy, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, if we have a look and see how the solver's playing river.
Okay, so you were right, I was wrong as usual. Yeah, so what's going on here is that I guess the fact that it's ace king still brings us quite a huge advantage, and the SPR is just so low that we are supposed to shove here quite thin for value. So you see like ace 10 here can still be a value shove along with ace jack. What do you think about this in practice? Because I think, if people end up overfolding, they are supposed to call quite often, right, with these odds. If people are overfolding, I guess then going for it with ace jack is probably not, or ace 10 is probably not great, right?
Yeah, I think people probably would overfold this spot. So maybe it's a spot you want to continue more with your bluffs and then just be a little bit more conservative with your value. So I personally wouldn't be shoving ace jack on the river. I would just check that hand. I think I would start at around the ace queen. But even to me, ace queen feels like close-ish, right? Against population, maybe. One thing I was going to ask you to do is actually change the bet 25% to bet 5% and just see if there's any donks for out of position. Sorry, any blocker bets for like 5%. So just leave in the all-in and the really tiny bets because I do think it is a concept that could happen, but not for the size we chose. And yeah, it's not coming in, so we can just ignore it. But I have seen the similar concept as to what you mentioned in some other sims, but yeah, it's obviously in a bit of a different spot. So a little bit more study needed from us here.
I would be curious really quick if we make this like 10, if things change. I'm not sure if it's about if it's due to the king or due to the SPR. Let's see this very, very quick. Okay, so now you see there's a bit more of this stuff going on, so it shows that it is a concept, but yeah, still not enough
That's
to be
interesting.
significant.
Why did you think it would change with the ace 10 too? Because I wouldn't have thought of that. What is the concept at play here for you?
Well, it's just that we on the other board we have way more nutted hands that he doesn't have, right? Because especially in these positions, he's almost never calling ace king pre-flop. He's never calling aces or kings, but here he's gonna have some ace 10. He might have some 10-8. He's gonna have some tens, right? So it's just like the nut advantage is not that significant for us. Therefore, we probably can't shovel that often. But you see, it's not like something huge, just a higher frequency of.
Yeah, I quite like that
Small
though as a
size.
takeaway, right? Because as you can see here, ace queen off is like now checking quite a lot, and then ace queen suited is going for a lot of these block bets. And I suppose the takeaway here is that like when he can have more of those ace 10, 10, 8 type of hands, pocket tens as well, that you do just have to be careful when you shove, right? Because he is going to have more nutted hands in his range compared to a board like ace king X, where, as you said, right, we can still go for a shove because he's still going to be pretty capped, right? Just from pre-flop through to turns and rivers.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like, don't want to go very deep into this, but maybe something that could be worth exploring as well is what happens if the ace is actually not a flush, because in that scenario he can also have so many nut flushes. So yeah,
Yeah, if
that
it
might
was
also change things a little bit.
nice, yeah. Okay, let's jump on to another one then.
Okay, we ISO to 3x here. Yeah, I don't think I like this much. I think I would prefer going at least 3.5, and usually I would go to 4.55 big blinds if he's a big whale, even bigger. I'm not sure in what kind of conditions I like this. Maybe only if, I don't know, this guy just check limp raises a lot and we don't want to lead. But yeah, like, I would just go bigger. I can't think of many scenarios we want to go so small. What's your thoughts?
Um, so my thoughts would be I prefer a smaller size the closer we are to earlier positions. So obviously someone's missing from this table, but if villain had opened as under the gun and we were in MP, I don't mind going for a smaller size because you have so many people left to act behind. And the bigger that you start going, you're sort of handing them a little bit of VV. Also with a hand like King 10 suited, it's a hand that if someone behind starts, three betting, you want to start having some calls as well, right? So if you start going to 5 or 6 big blinds, maybe they start making the 3 bets so big that you start becoming uncomfortable with King 10. But again, not too much of a huge concern, but that would be one thing I would think about. Obviously, if you're on the button, then I would just be ISO into a much bigger size. You're going to play in position, but yeah, in this position, you still might not get to play in position. Villain 9 might come along, and again, right, that's less attractive in a bigger pot playing out of position and multi-way. So there's some ideas behind it that I don't mind. But yeah, against recreationals that are bad and are gonna call way too wide, we can definitely just start going bigger.
Yeah, alright. We get called just by the recreational, which is the dream scenario, I guess. He goes for a check, and in this spot, I think I would pretty much always bet. I mean, yeah, no, there are very few situations where I would check back, particularly if I think this guy is a huge maniac, and I know he's white pre-flop, and he's just gonna start putting a bunch of money into the pot with a bunch of weak holdings if I check back, but against most recreationals are knowns without reads, I would just like to bet here myself. I personally, I mean, I think any size would work, but to bet for a really big size, I would prefer having a higher kicker. Again, it obviously depends how wide the guy is, right? Because if we're playing against a 70 VPIP, this hand is worth much more than if we play against a nitty 12 VPIP, right?
Yeah, I mean, my argument would be we wouldn't want to ISO a 12 VPIP guy, but I guess I understand what you're saying. You know, if the guy's a 25 VPIP fish or a 30 VPIP fish compared to 70 VPIP, of course, against a 70 VPIP guy, you just go as big as you want, really. But this hand is going to be pretty much the nuts. As a standard here, I would start betting, you know, half pot plus. I think that's the size. Villains are just not really elastic too. I think even just going 75%, 80% here is going to be fine as well.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, we go 1/3, which, like, I think this has its merits as well. But here, I think if we think of his calling range, there's so many draws available, so many pair plus draws, random pairs and stuff, that I don't think his range is going to be super elastic to sizing. Therefore, I think going slightly bigger could work a bit better, especially if we think, like, in time these kind of things compound, right? And if we could get 5 big blinds and we only get 2.3, especially if he folds the turn to match, then we could probably lose some EV if we go too small here.
Yeah, I agree. I would definitely size up here. I think I would like this small size a bit more if we had some reads on villain that he was able to get induced, right? And he's going to find some check raises or something. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not putting this amount of money in because, like, I would be putting this amount of money in because I expect villain to then start putting in more money. If villain is passive and he's not going to put more money in himself, then I just want to put more money in myself, right?
I mean, yes, but I'm not sure this is the kind of hand that's really that wants to induce a raise and call down. I mean, he could, like, even a passive guy, especially if he doesn't have an opening range, can have a bunch of better King X here. I think this is very strong against a recreational, but I wouldn't be super happy to face a check raise and a triple barrel all-in.
Yeah, but that's what I said. If we weren't up against a passive guy, if we were against an aggressive guy, then this is better because he may start check raising us and going crazy, right? Against a passive guy, you just bet the size that your hand wants to bet, which is going to be bigger.
Yeah. Alright, we bet, he calls, and this is a really nice turn. He checks again, and thinking of sizing, I actually don't think I want to overbet here, just because it seems like the recreationals tend to be super elastic to something like 90% compared to 150. So that's one reason. I think something like 90% would get way more calls. And second, the SPR here is not that big, so even if I bet 90%, I can still shove the river quite comfortably. Yeah. On the other hand, I don't think overbet would be bad. I think on average in these spots it's just gonna be slightly lower EV. What do you think, Paul? What sizing would you pick, or would you check back?
Yeah, I mean, I would just I would never ever overbet this spot. I think I think overbetting here is just a spot where we get loads of folds from out position. Recreational, I think he's gonna call the flop too wide, and yeah, I would generally lean closer towards pot as my biggest sizing. Again, I would prefer it if the first draw was with the 4 and the 7, right? So, like, hoping that villain has more of those King X plus flush draws. If that's the case, I think we can go bigger. But here, once we just turn top pair, and a lot of his pocket 5, pocket 6s have now been reduced, I think just going around 75% is probably the size I want to go and try to get a call from those, you know, pocket 5s, pocket 6s type of hands. Because I do think a recreational will still call those and their 8s and stuff. So, yeah, looking to get value from 7x plus here, I think, as well as maybe some pocket pairs, and I think 75% around that size is good.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is also fine.
Yeah,
maybe he's
good.
gonna start folding some pocket pairs, but there's still so many King X and draws
Yeah,
available
for sure.
that I think this is fine. Interesting river. Are we gonna face a donk shove? Something tells me we are.
Let's see. Oh,
Yeah, it's not shove. For me, this would be a snap call. Like,
yeah.
he's. I think I would like to mention for the viewers, if we have any, I don't know, that this is a size that's very, very overbluffed by recreationals. So I think if he were to shove here, I would just fold. But if I see half pot, You just need to realize how many draws still missed here. So stuff like 5-6, 5-3, I don't know, 7-6, 4-6. You could just turn all of those into bluffs here. You could have 8-9, whatnot. And remember, we only need to be good a quarter of the times in order to call. And also the fact that this size is generally super overbluffed. Yeah, I don't think I would ever do anything but calling here.
Yeah, a recreational here could also just donk a worse hand, right? If he's got like ace queen with queen of diamonds, I wouldn't be surprised to just see that arrive here. So just think of the same as Alexandra here. The size is generally overbluffed. Again, 50% is going to be even more overbluffed from recreational. Pot not so much, and overbets not so much. So yeah, I would just call here based on hand strength and not think too much about the spot. Oh, and there we go. We see the pocket sixes. So yeah, nice to see that he called versus size we used on the turn. And yeah, nice to see obviously the bluff on the river.
Yeah, I think there's not many hands he would just call against 75 but fold against 90. I think it's quite hard to imagine that, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that is important here, if we can just go back and see the price we're getting on the river, is just like how infrequently we have to be good here, right? Because sometimes you see recreationals that have donked 3 times in a row, and not the same recreational, right? Different recreationals, and they've turned up with good hands. But like we are supposed to lose in this spot very often, and we're still able to make money, right? But it can feel bad if like time after time they seem to be having the best hand. I think as long as you keep in mind who you're playing against and you profile the recreational well enough, I think you just have to take this spot with King 10, and you're going to lose a bunch of time, but it still should be profitable.
Yeah, I think that's quite important to note. Okay, anything else to add here, or should we go next then?
No, let's jump on to another one.
Okay, we open and we get min 3-bet. I don't think we fold anything here. We call.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would assume this guy is a recreational, although I would keep in mind this can also be a misclick. I do this sometimes by mistake. Alright, so how often have you studied click 3-bet pots out of position?
I'm probably one of the best players in the world at this spot.
Go on then.
No, I'm completely joking. I've never studied it. The one thing I would just take away from this spot is that if we're up against a recreational, which whether we're up against a recreational or a misclick, there's just going to be a lot of trash in their range. And something to just keep in mind in most situations in poker as well is the lower the board, the more that ranges are going to miss that board, right? So, obviously on an ace high board, players generally have a lot of connection, right? Because people play ace high hands, and then as you move down, there's less of those hands, right? So when we get to a 9 high board here and we've got top pair, I'm just pretty happy with this spot, right? Because he's got a lot of like 10x hands, jack x, queen king, ace x hands that just naturally miss here. So against the recreational, we could make some arguments of whether we want to donk, but I think in this situation when we do just flop top here, I think we just like check here and just let him do his thing. I think he's probably just going to end up putting in too much money with too many hands that probably shouldn't. So wouldn't be surprised to see a guy, click with a6 offsuit here and start betting the flop, right? Which I think would generally not be a great thing to do.
Yeah, completely agreed. I think if this guy is just super passive and starts checking back all of his overcards, then donking would make a bunch of sense because all that we accomplish by checking is giving him free equity. But this is a valuable information, so keep that in mind. In general, these low boards are going to be quite overbluffed in 3-bet pots by regulars, but recreationals even more unless they 3-bet very tight. And this is because of what Paul mentioned. They have so many stuff in their range that misses, and all of them are gonna look decent to bluff because they all have some equity with like 2 overcards or like 2 overcards and a backdoor something. So yeah, it's and it's going to be tempting to start barreling with those instead of just giving up. So yeah, these textures in general are going to be overbluffed. Therefore, without reads, I wouldn't implement donks.
Okay, let's see how it goes.
Here, but it's really small. Yeah, I think I like check calling. I wouldn't be surprised if a solver would start check raising here, but for the reason that I just mentioned, that I expect this to be rather overbluffed than him making a bunch of mistakes against check raises, I do prefer calling. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think it's close. I like a check raise as well, just because you're going to get to clear out a lot of equity, right? So just getting him to fold that a6 offsuit is great for us. If he's just got some king X hands that are going to fold, I think that's fine as well, right? So yeah, I think here I don't mind whether we check call, and I also don't mind just going for a check raise as well. So whatever, we'll see what our hero did.
He goes for a small check raise.
I would go slightly bigger than this. I mean, I'd go at least 7.5, I think. Like at least 3x, but I think this is okay. I mean, I think what's nice about this sizing is that you're going to keep a lot of worse hands in a recreational's range, right? So if the villain has king 10, king jack, king queen off with a club, they're going to be continuing. Even if they have it with a heart, I think, all those hands are just going to be continuing. You are going to just get him to fold some hands with equity. You're also going to get him to call with worse. So I think this is okay, actually, right? Like, I can't imagine a recreational is going to fold pocket fours here or pocket sixes,
Yeah, I think my first thoughts here was same as you, that I would like to see a bigger size, but then thinking about it, I think I actually really like this because it does put a bunch of his hands, like, I don't know, a6 offsuit, as you mentioned, in quite a tough spot. I don't think that's supposed to pure fold or anything, while also not overplaying our hand. So if we want here like 11 big blinds, that would start to be quite an insane overplay. And I think the other thing that's going on here is that if we assume his range is quite wide and full of trash, maybe he just wanted to open pre-flop, then we kind of just raise for like thin value and protection. So in these kind of spots where he bets too wide with the too wide range, we actually do start using these very small raise sizes. So I think I actually really like this size.
Yeah, I think it's really well played. Let's see what happens from the recreational. Okay, was expecting some click raise maybe.
He calls, the turn is a deuce, and I think here we could do whatever. I wouldn't like seeing a pot size bet or something like that, because yeah, I think that's gonna be quite an overplay. But yeah, I don't mind betting. I definitely don't mind betting something like half pot again. There's a bunch of worse hands that would call us. On the other hand, if we check, we kind of give him away a bunch of free equity, and
Yeah,
this is not really a good card to like. If we had something stronger like fives, for example, or ace four, I think I do like checking, because I do expect recreationals to bet here with a bit more, a bit too many high equity hands that we can just get him to fold or call bad if we check shove. But this hand is really way too weak to check shove. So I think, thinking about it, I actually prefer just going for a small bet myself here. What do you think? How would you play?
yeah, I would personally just play this as a bet. I think anything from 33 to 75% is going to be fine. I think you are still going to see recreationals with 3x, 5x, pocket fours continuing, even against the 75%. As we saw on our last hand, they're not very elastic to sizes. So if we're going to go 50, maybe we can just go a bit bigger. Obviously, it's a little less good when there's a bunch of rivers that can just downgrade our hand. But I would just imagine that, yeah, maybe somewhere like 50, 66% here is just probably a spot where he's still going to continue a lot of weaker pairs, a lot of draws, and then just overs, right? I don't expect ace queen or ace jack here to start folding against a 50, 60% bet. So I would like to see a bet. And then let's see what hero did. And we can Okay, so yeah, he goes for the check, yeah. And I think in this spot you just have to keep in mind just how wide a recreational can be, even after the check raise. Obviously against a reg, they would be less wide, but yeah.
Yeah, I would also like to see a bet here. We already talked about that.
Okay, so in a check line now, even though the river is a club, I still think our hand is just worth value. I also still think that villain is going to be in position with a lot of weaker hands, right? So he has as we said, right? Maybe he has a6, or maybe he has those 6-7, 7-8s. Maybe they're in offsuit versions as well, right? So there's even more of those type of hands. Maybe he has a lot of like Jack 10, King 10, King Jack, King Queen, which we expected him to continue on the flop. So there's potentially a lot of hands in the recreationals range that he can start bluffing now. Don't think there's a whole lot of value in his range, right? I think over pairs are definitely going to be betting on the turn. Would expect any better 9x to be betting on the turn. So I'm really in a situation here where I think we either go for value ourselves, or if we're up against a guy who's going to just put too much money in with weak hands, we check and bluff catch. So I think either's fine. What do you think?
Yeah, I do agree with you. I do think either's fine. But if we think about his range, I think there would be on average more value to be get here from bluffs than betting ourselves.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even be super surprised if some recreationals, if they have sevens here, just start betting 5 big blinds because they think, I don't know, they get called by ace king or whatever. Like, I've seen that more often than
Yeah.
I expected. So I think on average, yeah, there would be a bit more value to be get by
Yeah.
checking than betting ourselves.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I also wouldn't be surprised to see ace 3, pocket fours, ace 5, just go for like a pot size bet here, right? Especially if he has some like ace 5 off with the ace of clubs or something, right? So I do think checking here probably could outperform just betting ourselves. So
Yeah, and also if we bet ourselves, some recreationals would probably figure out we don't have that many value hands either, because we'd probably keep betting our flash draws or check raise or something on the turn. So I think they could find some bluffs here with some ace-x of clubs or even random hands. I wouldn't be very happy to be put in a bluff catching spot here for, to like bet and then he shoves. I think it's quite a shit spot to be in.
okay, let's see what happened.
Yeah, well, easy call.
I mean,
Sorry.
I was going to say, I mean, I wouldn't even hate if we just like click raised or something. Yeah. I mean, maybe not if his range is just full of bluffs. I don't think we need to, but like, yeah, I think we just have a very, very strong hand here against his sizing. So yeah, I mean, yeah, this is just always at least a call.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I think we clicked through it quite quick then, but recreational had Jack 10.
Oh, I thought we could see that. Yeah, he had Jack 10 off.
I think you did show it quickly, but just in case.
Yeah, and this just shows, how many possible bluffs he has by the river, because he's not really folding anything on the flop, and this is why I really like the flop size as well, because these kind of hands to be put in quite a tough spot. If we go 10 big blinds, then he can just fold this. But yeah, it also shows how wide he gets to the river with and how overbluffed this spot is going to be.
Yeah, I think it was a really nice hand. Well played by Hero.
Yeah. Congrats to our hero. We have aces. I think this is gonna be a pure fold against the cutoff open. I don't really like how it plays.
What could go wrong with pocket aces, eh?
Yeah. He was 12 big blinds. I'm not sure. Like, I've seen him 3-betting before to 11.5. I'm not sure if, yeah. If I do that, it's just because my scroll is broken and I don't manage to figure out the size, so... But I'm not sure if he does this with aces and goes 11.5 with other hands. That's not really good. I hope that's not the case. We get called and we see a Jack 5 board. Again, quite a good board for us, especially if we 3-bet the big blind correctly. We should have some low Jack X that 3-bet here. Also, I mean, yeah, not sure how often we 3-bet ace Jack off, but we should have that at some frequency at least, and he doesn't. So yeah, these Jack high boards are usually quite good for us. I think we can just go for a range bet, 1/3, or in this situation I think we can even size up to 40% and it's gonna be fine. I think this is gonna be good enough for us that we can still range bet and don't need to size down to a quarter. So yeah, that's how I would play it. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously range is a little bit different, big blind versus cutoff, but I've looked at the spots, small blind first button on different boards, and generally the lower the paired board. So if we got 775, we start using bigger C bets, right, like 50% plus, and that's because a lot of our betting range is going to be driven by the overpairs, and as you go to eights, nines, tens, that's generally the same. But then as you get to Jack X, Queen X, King X, you do just see more of these, 1/3 being the size that we use. Just because not only do we have like over pairs, but then we have a lot of connection to the pairs, right? So like we have a lot of Jack X in this spot, we'd have a lot of Queen X or King X if it was Queen Queen five or King King five. So yeah, like the size.
Yeah, and
Yeah, sorry, go on.
sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that when it gets so high, um, we do have more jack X and stuff, but also we want to keep value betting some tens and nines here sometimes. So if we were to go big, that those hands are supposed to just check.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So we bet, he calls, turn is queen of diamonds. And yeah, these spots really confuse me, to be honest, because I know in a solver on these paired boards we're still supposed to go relatively thin for value, and something like aces here is gonna be probably strong enough to go for a triple barrel, especially if we double block ace jack suited. But then I'm always wondering, like, if you look at what they are supposed to call with, they're supposed to call down a decent frequency of under pairs up to the river, and I'm thinking how thin we can actually value bet in reality if we expect them not to call enough, because at least on GG 200, 500, even though the stakes are relatively high, I still think people are massively overfolding here. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that, and why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because it happens to me in game. You get here with pocket aces, and like, I mean, well, you get here with like a hand that's a bluff, and you're like, I know this spot is like overfolded by populations. You triple off, and they call you with the pocket fours, and then and then you have aces, and you're a little bit more hesitant to triple off because you think it's an overfolded spot. Yeah, I mean, again, like think about your player pool, right? Like 100 or 50 NL on GG or PokerStars is probably people are just going to overfold. If you're playing, for 2 or 500 NL on PokerStars, then the pool's a bit tougher. They're probably going to, play closer to how they should. I don't play on GG, but I assume 200 to 500 NL on GG is probably more like 100 NL on PokerStars, right?
Oh,
So,
come on.
no, I mean the population's level, not your level. So yeah, I mean, in this spot, I would just play the way I think I should be playing. Right, I'll make a deviation maybe on rivers sometimes, but like, yeah, pocket aces. I mean, we have a lot of bluffs here, right? We have like the king tens, king nines, or we have ace kings, ace tens, like hands that are going to want to continue. Pocket aces here. Villain should be continuing on flop with the king queens and queen tens with backdoor flushes and ace queens. So I think there's still a lot in this range that can call. I still would expect people to continue with a hand like nines and tens at frequencies. So yeah, I'm just going to continue with pocket aces here. Again, right, when we think about Jack Jack 5 and turns to queen, queen's really good. It's really connects to our flop betting range. But it becomes a little bit more grim in the way that population should be calling down. But if the turn was a 2, that's never a spot I would ever be like debating, right? Like, because people are just probably going to over defend, right? Like pocket sixes on the turn versus 75% should probably be, indifferent, and I think people will just always call those hands.
I think it. I mean, maybe in earlier positions not, but against button, I think sevens would still be a pure call on the turn in theory as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're playing cutoff, but like, and again, I said indifferent, right? So it's like, I think it's going to be closer. It's like, I think maybe pocket sixes should maybe just find some folds, but maybe not. And anyway, I was just trying to give an overall concept between when the turns are queen and when the turns are 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm wondering if we, like, I think aces are still strong enough to bet, but I'm wondering if we should mix in some checks just because, it unblocks in positions bluffs, because when he has an ace, he's a bit more likely to check back. And based on that, you see, hands, like, stronger hands containing an ace, like, into check the turn sometimes. And then I'm also wondering, based on suits, if we'd like to maybe unblock a bit more ace queen suited or block a bit more ace jack suited. So maybe would want to mix in some checks based on that, but definitely betting is completely fine as well.
Yep. Let's see what villain did. Okay, he goes for a check.
And he checks back. River's a 4. Yeah, I think I don't mind doing either here. I mean, just aces is definitely strong enough to go for a big bet, but just based on blockers and non-blockers, I think this hand is also nice to check sometimes because it just unblocks a bunch of his checkbacks, and he's not really supposed to bet stuff like king 10, 9 10, a bunch of flush draws on the turn, just because he doesn't want to get check raised on. So yeah, I think this hand here can do anything. If the guy is super passive, I prefer betting though.
Yeah, I think something like 75% here probably performs really well, because I would just imagine people are gonna call probably too much then with their pocket pairs, their 5x maybe against that size. May even find some ace high hero calls. I was just thinking at the start, I maybe just shove this as well. Maybe shove is just the same as 75%. Don't think villains in reality will have enough jack x that get to the river here, so I think we just have the best hand. And yeah, I think against villains we just try to decide what size they're going to make the biggest mistake against.
Yeah, I personally, I think shoving here is fine. I think going 3/4 is fine. I think checking sometimes if he's not super passive is also fine. The only thing I don't like at all would be a small bet here.
Let's see what happens.
So hopefully not a small bet. No!
You literally jinxed it. It was always going to be a small bet when you said that. Yeah, I mean, now the guy calls like pocket tens, which he would have called anyway. So 75%, you know.
Folds.
So
he folds 10-9 that he would have bluffed if we checked.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I prefer checking over this size, I think, for sure.
Alright then. Should we wrap it up with this hand or?
Yeah, I think we'll make that a last hand and just let the people in the chat know. For around, I think, an hour after the stream, you can still get 1 month free if you sign up to run it once, either Essential or Elite. So yeah, I'll put the link back in the chat for you guys, and also just let you know that we also have a Discord if you'd like to join that. I will post the link for Discord. And yeah, we also do a little YouTube channel where we post some videos on. If you guys would like to check that out, then that's the account that is posted in here, FNC Poker, if you'd like to check that out as well. But yeah, that's everything from me, Alex.
Yeah, pretty much everything for me as well. We're gonna try to, host these streams regularly. So yeah, if you wanna send hands for us to review, again, join our Discord. And yeah, make sure to keep an eye on Running Towards Discord and forums, because we're going to announce the next streams.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks for joining.